My teenage stepson changed the locks on my house while I was on a work trip, then claimed it was for home security. So I did this when he asked for money, and I woke up to 19 missed calls, throwaway, because my stepson knows my main account, and I honestly don't need more drama right now. I, male, 43, have been married to my wife Janet, female, 41, for 7 years. We met when her son Zach was 9, he's 16 now, and I thought we had a pretty good relationship for most of that time. We also have 2 kids together, Ella, female, 7, and Phil, male, 5. Sorry if this is kind of all over the place. I'm still pretty pissed about what happened and trying to figure out if I'm overreacting or if this is as messed up as I think it is. So I work as a regional sales manager for a building materials company, which means I travel a lot, usually 3 to 4 days at a time, a couple times a month. It sucks being away from the family, but the money is good, and honestly, Janet has always been super supportive about it. Zach's biological dad, Carl, male, 44, well, he's a piece of work. He'll disappear for months and then suddenly show up wanting to be dad of the year for a weekend before vanishing again. This has been going on basically Zach's whole life. I guess I should mention that over the past year or so, Zach has been getting more and more difficult to deal with. Staying out past curfew, grades dropping, rolling his eyes whenever I try to talk to him about literally anything, the usual teenage stuff, I guess. But it feels like it's gotten way worse lately. Janet always tries to smooth things over and makes excuses like he's just going through a phase or all teenagers are like this or whatever. I try not to push it too much because I don't want to be the evil stepdad, you know. Anyway, about 2 weeks ago, I had to go to this sales conference in neighboring state. The trip was a nightmare. Travel problems and work issues meant I was completely exhausted by the time I got home Sunday night around 11:30 p.m. So I get to the house, drag my suitcase up to the front door, and my key doesn't work. I'm standing there like an idiot trying to figure out if I'm using the wrong key or something. I check all my keys, try again, nothing. At this point, I'm thinking maybe the lock is just stuck or something. I try calling Janet, but she doesn't answer. Later found out her phone was on silent. I start walking around the house looking for any open windows or the back door, but everything's locked up tight. I go back to the front door and knock pretty loud, and after a minute I see the porch light flick on and Janet looking through the window. She opens the door looking all confused and half asleep. I'm like, "Why doesn't my key work?" And she just looks totally baffled and says she has no idea. Long story short, we figured out that Zach had called a locksmith 3 days earlier and had all the locks in the house changed. His excuse: there were break-ins happening in the neighborhood and he was worried about safety. He even gave Janet a new key and apparently made copies for Ella and Phil in case of emergency, which makes 0 sense since they're 7 and 5, but whatever. But somehow he just forgot to make a key for me, the guy who pays the mortgage, on the house, that I couldn't get into. I was way too tired to deal with this that night, so I just went to bed. But the next morning, I found all this evidence that he'd thrown a party while I was gone. There were these weird red cup stains on our coffee table, a small burn mark on the couch that definitely wasn't there before, and the recycling bin was completely filled with empty soda cans and pizza boxes. When I confronted him about it, he doubled down on his break-in story, even pulled up some article about a burglary that happened 6 months ago in a neighborhood like 5 miles from us. And Janet, she actually defended him at first. She told me we should be grateful he was thinking about the family's safety and being proactive. Are you kidding me? The kid obviously changed the lock so he could throw a party without me coming home and catching him, and he deliberately didn't make a key for me. How is that not completely disrespectful? I feel like I'm going crazy here. I've always tried to be fair with Zach. I never tried to replace his dad or anything, but I've still tried to be a good influence. I've taken him fishing, helped with school projects, taught him to drive. Nothing seems to matter. It's like he's determined to push me away no matter what. I don't know what to do anymore. Am I overreacting here? Is there something deeper going on with him? How do I handle this without making things worse? Edit. A lot of people are asking if there have actually been break-ins in our neighborhood. No. I checked with neighbors and called the local police station. There have been no recent break-ins reported anywhere near us. The article Zach showed us was from 6 months ago about a burglary in a completely different part of town. Edit 2. To those asking about consequences, Janet and I are still discussing it. And by discussing, I mean, I think there should be actual consequences, and she thinks taking away his phone for the weekend is enough. It's frustrating. Edit 3. We don't have cameras inside the house, but we do have a doorbell camera I installed last year for package deliveries. Didn't even think about checking it until now. We'll update if I find anything. Also, about his bio dad. Carl will sometimes go months without contacting Zach, then suddenly want to take him on expensive trips. I've tried to be consistent, but maybe that makes me boring. Now for the first update. So a lot has happened in the 2 weeks since my last post, and honestly, things have gotten way worse. I want to thank everyone who commented. I read everything, even though I couldn't respond to all of you. You guys really helped me realize I wasn't crazy for being upset about this whole lock situation. First, I need to address something that like a ton of you suggested in the comments. Checking our security cameras. I completely forgot to mention in my first post, sorry about that we have this doorbell camera I installed last year, mainly for package deliveries, since we've had some issues with porch pirates in the past. I honestly didn't even think about checking the footage until so many of you brought it up. Well, you guys were 100% right. I went back and checked the footage from when I was gone, and surprise, surprise, the night after I left town, Zach threw a party, and not just like a small get-together with a few friends. I'm talking at least 15 teenagers coming and going until almost 3 in the morning. And yeah, I clearly saw several kids bringing in alcohol and what looked like weed. I mean, I'm not naive. I know what teenager smoking looks like. So Janet and I decided to have a family meeting with Zach to confront him with this evidence. I connected my laptop to the TV so we could all watch the footage together. You should have seen his face when I pulled up the video. He looked like he'd seen a ghost or something. At first, he tried to play it off like they were just hanging out, but then I started pointing out specific timestamps showing his friends arriving with alcohol. He claimed he didn't know they were bringing that stuff, which was total bullshit. Janet asked him about why he lied about the break-ins in the neighborhood, and that's when he got super defensive. He basically said that all his friends' parents travel, but only his spy on him. This made me so angry because the camera wasn't for spying on him. It was for packages. I tried explaining that to him, but he just rolled his eyes. God, that eye-rolling drives me insane. He finally admitted that, yeah, he changed the lock specifically so he could have the party without getting caught. Janet started crying at this point, saying she felt betrayed and manipulated. Zach just stormed off to his room and slammed the door like a freaking 5-year-old. After that, Janet and I talked about consequences, which a lot of you asked about in my previous post. We agreed that he would be grounded for 2 weeks, lose phone privileges except for emergency calls to us, have to pay for new locks from his own savings, and would need to maintain a B average to earn back his other privileges gradually. Oh, and side note, Zach had been saving for this gaming computer for like 6 months, and when we told him he had to use that money for the new locks, he had a complete meltdown. I'm talking throwing things, screaming the works. Real mature. So anyway, about 3 days into his grounding, something weird happened. Janet was at a parent-teacher conference for Ella and Phil, and Zach came up to me in the kitchen. He actually called me Mitchell instead of just grunting or ignoring me like usual. That was my first clue something was up. He asked if we could talk privately, and he seemed all, I don't know, respectful. He told me he needed $300 by tomorrow for a concert deposit. According to him, Carl, his bio dad, had promised to take him to this big music festival coming to town next month, but Carl had just texted saying he couldn't afford the tickets anymore. Zach said the deadline for the group ticket rate was tomorrow, and he was hoping to go with friends instead. The whole time he's telling me this, I'm just not buying it. Like the timing was too convenient. He waited until Janet wasn't home, and suddenly he's being super nice to me after weeks of treating me like garbage. And he needed the money immediately, of course. I decided this was a good opportunity to teach him about consequences. So I told him I would help him out and that I'd put $300 cash in an envelope inside our home safe. I gave him the combination and told him he could get it whenever. Except, I deliberately gave him the wrong combination. When he came back frustrated that it wasn't working, I told him now he knows how it feels to be locked out of something that should be accessible to him. I explained he'd get the correct combination when he showed actual remorse for changing the locks and betraying our trust. He called me an asshole and stormed off. Again. The next morning I had this super important early client meeting that I couldn't miss. It was scheduled for 3 hours, and I silenced my phone because, professional. After the meeting, I checked my phone and saw I had 19 missed calls. 7 from Zach, 5 from Janet, and 7 from Carl. What the actual hell? Apparently, Zach had tried the safe combination over and over, then called his bio dad in a total panic about missing the concert deposit deadline, which was supposedly at noon. Carl actually drove to our house while I was in my meeting, demanding to see me and causing this whole scene with Janet. When I finally talked to Janet, she was furious with me for playing games with Zach's emotions and not answering my phone. But why is this concert suddenly such a massive issue? And why would Carl drive across town to confront me about it? Something isn't adding up here. I found out later that the concert story was partially true. There was a deposit deadline, but Zach had actually planned to use the money for something else entirely. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly. Janet thinks I crossed a line into childish revenge with the safe combination thing. But honestly, after everything Zach has pulled, I feel like maybe he needed to understand how it feels when someone deliberately locks you out of something. Did I go too far? Or was this an appropriate life lesson for a teenager who's been consistently disrespecting me and breaking my trust? Edit. To answer the questions about what else Zach wanted the money for, I'm not 100% sure yet. Janet mentioned something about a girl he likes being involved, but I don't have the full story. We'll update when I know more. Edit 2. Several people have asked if I've tried family therapy. We actually did that about a year ago when things first started getting difficult with Zach, but he refused to participate after the second session. Maybe it's time to try again though. Edit 3. For those saying I'm treating Zach like he's not family, that's exactly how I felt when he deliberately excluded me from getting a key to my own house. And yes, I've tried building a relationship with him for 7 years. I've coached his baseball team, taught him to drive, helped with countless school projects. I'm not just some random guy his mom married. Edit 4. Thanks to everyone pointing out that Carl's reaction seemed suspicious. I thought the same thing. Why would he drive over and make such a scene about concert tickets? I'm definitely going to have a conversation with Janet about what exactly is going on with Carl these days. Now for the second update. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my previous posts. Seriously, I read through everything, even though I couldn't respond to all of you. I know opinions were pretty divided on whether my safe combination trick was justified or just me being petty as hell. Honestly, I get both sides. Not my proudest moment maybe, but whatever, I'm getting ahead of myself. So the past 3 weeks have been absolute chaos in our house, but also kind of enlightening, I guess. Like a lot of stuff that was hidden for years finally came out, and we're actually dealing with it instead of pretending everything's fine. Spoiler alert, things were definitely not fine. The day after my last post, Janet was still pretty pissed at me about the whole safe combination thing. She kept saying I was escalating instead of parenting, which, okay, fair point, but I was just so done with Zach's attitude, you know? Anyway, she insisted that we needed to meet with Carl face-to-face to understand why he'd made such a big deal about the concert situation. I wasn't thrilled about spending my Saturday morning with my wife's ex, but she was right that something wasn't adding up. So we met Carl at this coffee shop downtown. Carl kept checking his phone and acting all fidgety, which is pretty normal for him, to be honest. Janet finally just straight up asked him why he'd driven across town and caused a scene over concert tickets. After like 10 solid minutes of him avoiding the question, he finally admitted that he hadn't been honest with Zach about why he was backing out of their plans. Turns out Carl got offered some big job opportunity across the country and he's moving next month. The concert was supposed to be their last hurrah before he broke the news to Zach. I mean, what the actual hell? This dude was planning to wait until after the concert to tell his son he was moving thousands of miles away. And when Janet asked how often he was planning to see Zach after the move, he just shrugged and mumbled something about playing it by ear and technology making distance easier these days. I had to bite my tongue so hard I'm surprised it didn't bleed. But suddenly a lot of Zach's recent behavior started making more sense. The kid has always had this weird sixth sense about when Carl is about to disappear again. Like, he can just tell when his dad is pulling away, even before Carl actually says anything. So I'm sitting there thinking, maybe Zach has been acting out because he subconsciously knows his bio dad is about to bail on him. Again, anyway, Janet immediately called our old family therapist, the one Zach refused to keep seeing last year, and somehow managed to get us an emergency session that afternoon. I honestly didn't think Zach would agree to go, but Janet can be pretty persuasive when she wants to be. The therapy session was intense, like really intense. I won't go into all the details because it was pretty personal, but Zach finally opened up about a lot of stuff. One thing that really stood out was when he admitted that changing the locks wasn't just about throwing a party. He said it was also about feeling like he had some control over something in his life when everything else felt like it was spiraling. And here's something I didn't expect. During the session, the therapist asked Zach about coping mechanisms he uses when he's feeling anxious or abandoned. Janet mentioned that he still sleeps with this old stuffed bear sometimes, and Zach got all embarrassed but didn't deny it. What blew my mind was finding out it was the bear I got him during our first camping trip together when he was 9. I had completely forgotten about that bear. I just remember he was having trouble sleeping in the tent that first night, so I bought it at this little general store near the campground. I had no idea he'd kept it all these years, much less that it was important to him. I'm not gonna lie, that hit me right in the feels. It made me realize that despite all our issues, there must be some positive connection there, even if it's buried under layers of teenage angst and complicated family dynamics. After the therapy session, the therapist suggested that Zach and I have a private conversation, just the two of us. So the next day, I took him to this burger place he used to love when he was younger. Probably a bit manipulative on my part, but whatever. I was desperate. At first, it was super awkward, like painfully awkward. I started by apologizing for the safe combination trick and admitted it was retaliatory and not my finest parenting moment. Zach just sat there staring at his fries, not making eye contact. I tried to explain how hurt and disrespected I felt when I found out he deliberately excluded me when giving out the new keys. I asked him why he specifically made sure I couldn't get into the house. After what felt like forever of awkward silence, he finally told me that I try too hard to be his dad sometimes, but I'm not his dad. That stung pretty bad. I tried to explain that I've never wanted to replace Carl, just to be a good stepfather and support him however I could. That's when he finally looked up at me and told me that Carl's moving away again, and he's just supposed to be okay with it, like always. That's when it clicked that he wasn't really mad at me. I was just the convenient target because I was actually there. Unlike Carl, who keeps disappearing. Instead of lecturing him or getting defensive, which, believe me, was my first instinct, I just told him I understood why he'd be angry and hurt about Carl moving. That it's okay to have those feelings, and he doesn't need to pretend everything's fine. He didn't say much after that, but he did give me this little nod that felt like, I don't know, some kind of acknowledgement. Like maybe for the first time he believed that I was actually trying to understand him instead of just control him. Things didn't magically get better overnight. This isn't a Disney movie, haha. But that conversation definitely opened a door that had been firmly shut for a long time. About a week later, Zach actually approached me in the kitchen while I was making dinner. He asked if I could help him with some college application fees that were coming due soon. I immediately said yes, no questions asked, which seemed to surprise him for some reason. Like he was all prepared for me to grill him or make him jump through hoops or something. That led to this whole conversation about his plans after high school that I had no idea about because apparently he'd only ever discussed them with Janet. Turns out the kid wants to study environmental engineering, which is actually pretty cool. When I asked why he never mentioned any of this to me before, he told me he didn't want me to try to take over or tell him what to do, which honestly kind of hurt, but I get it. From his perspective, I probably do come across as controlling sometimes. I'm working on that. Small things started changing after that. He actually asked for my help on this science project about sustainable building materials, which is related to my industry, so I actually know a fair bit about it. He even joined us for family movie night last weekend without Janet having to nag him. He still rolls his eyes at my dad jokes, but now it seems more like normal teenage eye-rolling instead of pure contempt. Progress, I guess. Don't get me wrong, we still have plenty of tense moments and disagreements, but we're learning to address things before they explode into full-blown crises. The therapist has been super helpful with this part. Then last weekend I was on another work trip, unavoidable unfortunately, when I got a text from Zach asking if he could borrow $150 for a last-minute school trip deposit. I told him I'd transfer the money when I got back to my hotel after my meetings. He texted back asking if I could do it right away because apparently the deadline was that day. Not gonna lie, my first thought was, here we go again with the immediate money requests. After what happened last time, I was definitely skeptical. So I told him I'd need to verify the trip with Janet first. Instead of getting defensive or angry, he immediately sent me a screenshot of the school permission form and an email from his teacher about the deposit deadline. I called Janet, who confirmed the trip was legit. So I transferred the money right away and sent him confirmation. And then he replied with, "Thanks, stepdad," which might not seem like a big deal, but he hasn't called me anything but Mitchell, or sometimes nothing at all, in years. I was honestly kind of shocked. When I got home from my trip, I found out he'd actually baked these chocolate chip cookies that he knows are my favorite. Janet swears she didn't make him do it. He even mentioned that he understood why I wanted to check with his mom first before sending the money, given what happened with the concert situation. I know this all probably sounds really small and insignificant to anyone with normal, functional family relationships, but for us, it feels like massive progress. I've been thinking a lot about how sometimes the worst experiences can lead to unexpected growth. I definitely wouldn't recommend my approach as a parenting strategy. Seriously, don't play mind games with your kids. It's not cool. But I think the conflict forced us to address issues that had been simmering for years. Carl finally told Zach about the move last week. As expected, Zach was pretty upset, but he seems to be processing it better with me and Janet's support. We're making sure he knows that even though Carl is leaving, he still has a stable home with us. We're still working through our blended family challenges. I mean, this stuff is complicated. Teenagers are complicated enough on their own, but when you add in all the blended family dynamics with divided loyalties and unclear roles, it's a lot. But I actually feel hopeful that we're finally building some foundation of mutual respect. Oh, and Zach offered to help me install one of those smart lock systems on our house this weekend. You know, the kind you can control from your phone. His idea, not mine. Small gesture, but it feels symbolic somehow, like we're starting a new chapter. Anyway, thanks for listening to my rambling updates and for all the advice, even the stuff that was hard to hear. You guys helped me realize I needed to step back and look at the bigger picture instead of just reacting to the disrespect I felt. Edit. Several people have asked if we've told Zach about the doorbell camera footage from the party. Yes, he knows we've seen it. Part of our agreement is that he's responsible for paying to repair the burn mark on the couch from his savings. And yes, we did have a very long talk about underage drinking and drugs. Edit 2. To everyone asking if Carl is paying child support, yes, he is, though it's been inconsistent over the years. Janet has primary custody, and the legal agreement will remain in place regardless of where Carl lives. Edit 3. For those suggesting I adopt Zach, we've actually discussed this in the past, but it's complicated. Legally, Carl would have to terminate his parental rights, which he's not willing to do. But more importantly, Zach isn't ready for that step, and I respect his feelings on the matter. Maybe someday, but not right now. Edit 4. Thanks for the awards. Didn't expect this post to get so much attention. And to the person who suggested family game night as a bonding activity, we tried it last night. Zach actually seemed to enjoy it, even though he pretended to be annoyed at first. Turns out he's surprisingly competitive at Uno.